the bed's executive leadership and listen to what, and this is exactly what I was pointing to. Listen, I mean, this is almost perfect. Listen to what he says in response to this question about, could you imagine if I had behaved the way Trump is behaving?
Imagine if I had pulled Fox News' credentials from the White House press corps. You're laughing, but no, this is what's happening. Imagine if I'd said to law firms that were representing parties that were upset with policies my administration had initiated, that you will not be allowed into government buildings. We will punish you economically for dissenting from the Affordable Care Act or the Iran deal. We will ferret out students who protest against my policies.
What is fraudulent about that is that he set up, first of all, a straw argument. Because the real question, to the point I was making with Baby Girl's doctor, is if you had acted as aggressively on behalf of the politics people thought they were voting for you for, we would not be in the position we're in now, and maybe even people like me could be tricked back into supporting a Democratic Party candidate. In other words, if you had come in and, as you promised before you got elected, went full steam ahead for the Employee Free Choice Act, which he promised in 2008 he would support, allowing more workers to unionize, and then never mentioned it again for 8 years. If you had gone as hard for that as Trump and Musk are going at government employees and veterans and tariffing even islands with no humans on them, if you had done that, if you had actually not drone strike killed children, if you had redistributed the military budget so that everybody had actual health care instead of doing a Republican plan that Nixon types championed years ago and then rebranded Obamacare and guarantee by mandate private insurance, if you had done universal health care and said, you know what, everybody has health care, and if you don't fully give medical attention to anybody that shows up at your place of medical care, I'm going to use the full extent of my office to crush you. And if you don't like, if you don't like workers having $30 an hour minimum wage with full benefits and 20 weeks of paid vacation a year, then I'm going to make your life miserable. I mean, if he had done, but no, instead he does the false stuff of saying, if I had attacked Fox News like they had, could you imagine? Of course they're not like you. Of course they're being more gung-ho for their politics than the politics you claim to represent. And yet, oddly, your house and your estate at Martha's Vineyard that you go home to after making these kinds of speeches is no less big than theirs, I'm sure. So this idea, but he does this for 4 years, and that's why I really appreciate what we did today on Saturdays with Renee on Black Liberation Media. Because we won't be part of the problem where at least, we're not going to offer up electoral options and different approaches until the last minute, have sustained conversations, because this is the sustained conversations the Democratic Party has. Rebrand why they don't ever do anything, and then just tell everybody how they're not as bad as the Republicans to get the vote again. And then we end up with, as again, I literally said this in 2008, again, maybe not to a big audience, but I said he's going to make it so we end up with something worse. And we have to vote for Cynthia McKinney. We have to do something else. We have to begin to break the pattern, because all we're going to get is 8 years of that and then something worse. And then all he wants to do is act like, what if I was as bad as Trump? No, that's not the point. What if you went again, as you know, you were as vigorous in defending the version of yourself. If you really wanted to be Dr. King, as you alluded to in all your speeches running up to the election, then you would have said, we're going to go to the slums, like Dr. King said. And now that I'm president, I'm going to say, if you live in a project, if you live in a slum, send your rent check to this new office I've started. If Elon Musk can be head of Doge, then he could have created I don't know. I should have come up with something for that. But then he could have come up with an office that says, here's the office of no more slums. And you're gonna pay your rent not to the private owner of your property, but to this office. And then this office, with budget money that we're now going to take from the military, and with our tax increases on everybody who makes six figures and above, we're gonna fund this slum thing, and we're gonna take that money, because like Dr. King said, I'm gonna complete his mission, and we're gonna take that money and hook up the projects. You get a new balcony, you get a new air conditioning, you get like, if he had said, you know what, he wants to pardon all these crooks. I'm pardoning Asada, I'm pardoning Mumia, I'm pardoning whoever's left in these dungeons. But no, what did he do? He raised the bounty on Asada. This is the con. This is the con. So I know we're good over here, but with all due respect to us and myself, we don't have we're not we this is what we're up against, because that is and the Midas touch that's playing that, by the way. This is the other point I almost forgot. They're the new number one podcast that are better than Rogan, but they're not what we need either, because they're playing that as if to say, see, this is why we needed to have supported the Demo. Like, that's what they're not playing that to offer this criticism. They're playing that to say, see, and then he goes off and has this whole conversation. And they're almost at 5 million subscribers, and salute. They do pretty good work, but not the work we need, and they're not the alternative that humanity needs, because they're still saying, they're pointing to that like that's something good. And I'm looking at him like, this is your fault. You could have made this moot or gone down trying. I mean, that would have been great to watch, and it still might have made it moot, even if you had tried and really run up against opposition that stopped you. But he didn't. He didn't.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.